Just come back from 2 drift days, or 2 weekends of drifting in a row, and it's the first time I've had my extra lever here, my twin caliper setup. One was a dampened track at Stafford. They always wet it down there for noise regs. And another was a local drift day, St Zoyland, which was a dry, fully dry day. And the twin caliper setup has been absolutely spot on. What I'm going to do now, though, I'm going to go slightly back in time. I'm going to go back about 6 weeks or so to when I started fabricating the rear brackets and stuff. Don't go anywhere. Today is an exciting day. I'm going to be fitting my own DIY dual caliper setup. I'm going to use the standard MX5 Mark 1, Mark 2, 1.6 or smaller rear calipers. A pair of carriers, the other carrier is currently fitted on the car. I'll show you that in a minute. Set of pads, set of hoses, some brake pipe that I've not got here yet, and some kind of hydro. So yeah, it's one of these, cheap Chinese one, but the good thing about these, or the plus side for these, are they've got their own cylinder, own reservoir, which is built into the cylinder. Basically, yesterday I did one side, I got one bracket all welded up. Today I have just stripped this side, tacked this in, and it started off like this. It started off as like just a little pattern that I drew on a bit of cardboard, basically like that. And then yes, transferred it to some 6mm steel. Now you'll see there, if your car's got ABS like mine, you have an ABS sensor like that. I'm going to fully remove the ABS and get rid of the pump and everything, but at the moment I've just removed it from the front when I did the knuckles, because they're in the way of where you want to chop and weld it. And I'm just going to literally take all that wiring out and just not use it, because where you mount the bracket here is obviously, that's where you'd bolt the ABS. You could probably, I don't know, just have it as 2 individual brackets and leave it bolted on. You probably could do that, but like I say, I'm not interested in the ABS. If I go over to the other side of the car, you can see how far I've got with that. I haven't actually got the disc off, so you can't see where I've welded it, although I can put a picture in now. That's a standard big brake with a big brake disc, and then there is looks very, very similar. It's hard to tell, but these are actually just the standard smaller size, or what's considered in the MX5 world the normal size. Currently spaced out the bolts with a couple of nuts, but I'll sort that out later on. Yeah, that's all welded on, so this is in there. It's in there solid. So basically the plan is to get the other side on now all welded up. Depending on how much time I got tonight, I will maybe loosely fit the calipers with the pads in there, not sure. I'll weld up the other side. I can show you that, but it's not really much to look at. It's just loads of weld on there. The only thing to note with, if you're doing the same as me, you definitely want to be a competent welder. You don't want to be welding this if you've never done much welding before. With cast, you really want to pre-warm it. I think I mentioned this in the knuckle video where I was cutting the knuckles for the front. You want to pre-warm it as best you can. Because what happens else is, because they cool down at different temperatures, because this is just mild steel and this is cast, so what can happen is it can crack. So you need to make sure you're happy with that. Obviously, if that was to snap off and the caliper was to come round, it would just, well, don't know, it would definitely make a mess of your wheel, probably jam your wheel up, it'd probably lock your wheel up, so probably like blowing a diff up, like when it gets jammed or something. So yeah, not ideal situation, so you want to make sure you're happy when you're doing that. I'm going to stop yabbering now, I'm going to weld this up. Hopefully I can show you it on there in a minute. Right, so welded up both sides of this bit of plate. I just undone the top bolt, undone the bottom bolt, and undone the drive shaft, just so I could lean it forward a bit, just so I get in behind and weld in down here. But yeah, I've gone right the way around. I'll get this one here on with a disc, and we can have a look at the next stage then. So exciting stuff. Starting to build it back up. Got the standard brakes back on over this side. Got this carrier on in the right place. It's nice and clear. You can see the gap. The main thing you need to be careful of is the gap here, because there's not a lot of tolerance between that gap. Needs to be exact, same as it is on there. If not, the carrier will catch. I guess you could grind it out a bit if you didn't quite get it on there square, but yeah, got that on. Just had to use the file and file the paint off in the top. Quite a lot of aftermarket pads are like this, but the paint in here and in here was stopping these were grabbing, but now they're just right. Got the caliper fitted on both sides. It's literally just a case of sliding over the top slider and bolting the bottom bolt up. A couple of things to note. One is that you'll see that says R for right, even though it's on the left of the car, because you have to run them flipped so that the bleed nipple is at the top. If I was to put that on the other side where it would normally be, then the bleed nipple would be at the bottom, because obviously I'm flipping it over, if you see what I mean. It's like I've grabbed that caliper there and I've put it over like that. So whereas that one's at the top, that bleed nipple, it would then be at the bottom. So yeah, you need to make sure you flip them over. The other thing you need to make sure of is the mechanism for the handbrake cable. And when I got these brand new, it came with like a bolt-on bracket. I'll go see if I can find it. Yeah, they're just here. So both of them calipers came with these brackets here for the cable. Just unbolt those two. And then when I'm looking at this here now, I'm currently running extended top arms. There is a possibility, I guess, with certain coilovers or something, if you had standard springs, this could get quite close to there. So there is a possibility you might need to chop that off. But I think at the moment, it looks like there's easy enough clearance there for now. And basically, next up is to get the mountings for the hoses. So the hose needs to go somewhere where I can feed the brake pipe along. Probably going to be mounted somewhere, I don't know, might weld like a wash on it or something. So the hose just comes along, sits up there. But one hose has got like an in and out, and one hose has just got an in. So one side you're going to have the in and the out, which is then going to run into the car with the brake pipe. So you just need to work out where you're going to fit that. I'm going to jack the car all the way up once I've mounted them loosely, check it clears, do the same when it drops. And then yeah, then it's just literally fitting the hydro inside. I've looked through that with you. That's probably going to be the second most awkward job. That might even be the most awkward job actually, because there's very little space in MX5. Right, so back looking at this again. I've attached the first brake hose now. So he's on there, and what I've done is I've made a little bracket. Well, I found a bracket basically that was very similar, but just needed chopping and shortening. So the plan is to, if I put this on here, you'll see the holes line up through there, so I can put 2 bolts through. So the plan is to weld this up here like that, just on the part of the top of the subframe there, and then this should mount like that, and then you've got one port there which will go around to the other side, and that port there will go to the front, which will go to the hydro. So yeah, we'll do that now and see what that looks like. I've welded a bracket on the top corner. I've just sprayed a little bit of black on there, and I've bolted on the hose here. So we got one port there and one port around here, and I've actually gone around on the other side now as well. So if you look here, fitted this hose, I've welded another little bracket on there, and this one, because this is just a straight hose, it will literally just sit in there with a clip, and that'll be nice. Yeah, so it's going well now. Obviously I've got the hoses on. Just got to clip this hose in, make the brake pipe that goes across from one side to the other, then the brake pipe that goes inside, fit the actual hydraulic cylinder, and yeah, we're away. Looking forward to it, it should be good. Started making up the brake lines. Under here, you can see I've put the first brake line fitting across from there, underneath the heat shield to the other side. So yeah, you can see that over here. That's the other end of the brake pipe with the fitting. I've put a washer and then a clip, like a normal brake clip, onto the hose, so he's nice and secure. Got to just cut that cable tie off because I was just in there to mock it up. I probably will try and get in behind and clamp that pipe up to something on the chassis there, or the back of the subframe, but it feels pretty sturdy anyway because it's not a very long run of pipe. I have fitted the fitting that goes from there to the front of the car, and what I've done is I've used the hole where the ABS sensor used to come down. If you see, I've got rid of the ABS sensor now. I've just chopped them off, pulled them out, and yeah, just pops up through that like grommet. And I'm going to put a P-clip, probably I'm going to undo this 10mm hopefully. I've just wire brushed it off. Yeah, hopefully a P-clip will go around there and that will secure that nicely. So if we go inside the car, I've whipped the seat out and the silver cover that's on the back of here. I didn't have any carpet in it anyway before. Like I said, I've ran the pipe up through that grommet. I'll probably put some silicone around that so it can't touch anything metal. And then I'm going to run it along, and then once I've got the area where I want the hydro in, can get the correct fitting, mock it up. But I'd love to have it in this gap here between sort of your hand and the gear stick. Right, so yeah, when it comes to the point of fitting the lever in the cab, an MX5 is quite tight. Like I've got the seat right the way back here, literally as far back as a standard seat will go, and my knees, as you can see, I mean, when I've got the clutch down, it's not touching, but when I've not got anything, when I've not got my throttle down or the clutch down, my knees are literally pretty much against the door and against this lever here. So I have got a slightly smaller steering wheel, which should help with that situation slightly, because obviously, yeah, large steering wheel doesn't help. But I had to cut down this lever. Don't know why you can see that from this angle here, but yeah, I had to cut this down, and then I had to warm up and give it a bend, because basically it was pointing over here. I didn't want to adjust it up anymore, because then by the time you pull it, you're like catching where your hands are, and I didn't want to adjust it down anymore, because then trying to sort of pull it with your hand, it's a slightly not 100% exact where you'd want it angle. So that was about as good as I could get, but that is good enough that at that length, if you give that a yank, it locks up real well. But then what I ended up doing was, once I eventually got that, which it probably took longer to fanny around and get the lever in place here than it did to do most of the rest of it, really. It probably took me a good 2 or 3 hours of putting it in, is it right place, is it not, moving it around, blah blah. And then what I did is I just fitted 3 riv nuts. I think there might have already been one hole for something else already in there, like a hole for a clip or something, and then I drilled another 2 holes and I put 3 riv nuts in and 3 bolts, and it's absolutely, yeah, in the gearbox tunnel, and she's solid. So obviously then we've got the I don't know, what have we got? My brain's gone to mulch. You got the cylinder built into the reservoir, or the reservoir built into the cylinder, should I say. Obviously, once you got all this in and you connected all the pipe work up, now I did leave a little bit extra here. You'll see I've looped it down. I've left a bit of extra pipe there. That was because I wasn't sure, for any reason I didn't like it where it was, and I then had to move it forward, or like put it over here or something. You know, could have been further forward, could have been up here. I had a few options. I was going to go for over here because I was used to pulling it, but from other cars I've had before, it's much better to have it between the steering wheel and the gear stick, because you find that little adjustments, you know, you're changing gear and you pull the handbrake, then you're back on here. Whereas if you're steering and then you go over here to pull the handbrake and then you want to come back to the steering wheel, you sort of, your gear stick's a little bit, yeah, just, I find it better if it's in between. You see a lot of competition people have it like right here in between the two, and that is probably perfect. But with the cylinder being the size it is, I definitely couldn't have it right there. It would just be banging on my leg. Not with these seats anyway, maybe if I had a different seat. But I'm happy with this. Like I said, I've done 2 drift days now, and I didn't find it catching my knee. The only thing I did, which you can actually still see just about on my hand, is I wore a little blister from doing that. The first day I used it, what I did on the second day, the second Saturday, I actually put one of my fireproof gloves on just to protect my hand, because it was blistering up. So the only thing I'd say, if you're using this alley lever and you're at an angle like I'm at now, I would say you want to wrap some sort of, like, I don't know, either like a bicycle grip, maybe slide that over. That's about the right size of a handlebar. I reckon a bicycle grip would go over there, or some of that like tennis racket tape or something like that, just to wrap it round, just to protect your hand a bit, because my hands are generally quite rough anyway from mechanicking. But yeah, definitely you notice that after a day of pulling it. But yeah, on to bleeding it now. So the system was completely dry. So what I did first was I got a syringe onto a bit of brake pipe. I'll see if I can find a photo of it. And basically I backfilled the system. So where this pipe here goes down and joins it, like the T-piece on the rear hose, I left that undone so I could see any fluid coming out, and then I cracked off both nipples and I squeezed through. Probably, you know, there's only a little syringe like that big. Did that like 5 or 6 times on each side, eventually filled up the calipers and then started squirting out. So now I locked that one off, come back to here, filled that with fluid then, and luckily it's like an exact science, but luckily I can just about reach in, because the car is so small, reach in with my one hand and like grab the hydro with this hand, whilst my other hand is at the end with the bleeder, and I could bleed it like on off on off on off on off like that from each caliper. Did that a few times, and to be fair, it bled up pretty quick. I probably had it bled up in an hour, something like that, and exactly the same as how it is now. This hasn't changed, this is how it is. Yeah, I'm well happy with this setup. Obviously there's going to be downsides. You've got a bit of extra weight, but it's not a lot. I don't know what you're going to be adding, probably 5 kilos worst case with all the hoses and stuff. But the main thing that you gain is that the handbrake works every single time, because this handbrake here, to be fair, I normally pull that in, just put a little screw through that little hole there, and I can just do that of it, which is perfectly fine. But you just have to keep adjusting it. So if you go to a drift day, you know, where you're just at a normal practice day where you're going around quite a lot, by lunchtime that lever will be coming up and then it won't be locking every time. So then you go to throw it in, pull it, and rather than it locking nicely, it just sort of drags a bit, and then you got it just, yeah, it doesn't give you that 100% confidence that you can go in, send it and lock it. I could have just carried on driving like that, and every time I got somewhere, adjusted up. And if I was recommending to anyone who's new to like drifting, you probably don't need to go through the hassle that I have here just for the handbrake, because it's not as important really until you're doing trains and close drifting with people where you need to react. I mean, I had one, to be fair, this weekend just gone. Friend Jamie had a BMW just bought, and he spun a couple of times because he had some steering issues. I won't go into steering issues now, because if he watches this, which he probably won't, but if he does, it's slightly embarrassing what the person who owned the car before did to it, which made the steering pretty nasty. But anyway, he had some issues and he spun a couple of times, and obviously when they spin, the person in front of you spins, you need to really spin with them. So being able to pull the handbrake on it lock enough that I can just get around and spin, probably that handbrake, to be fair, probably saved me from hitting him at one of the points. I'll see if I've got it on video or not, but there was one that was, it felt pretty close in the car. But like I say, if you're just going out drifting on your own, or you're practicing, probably if it's your first year of drifting, you don't need to go as far as this. You don't even need a inline hydro. I wouldn't even bother with that. I'd keep using the standard one until you're like, when you get to the point where you're chasing people when you're within a car length, so you need to react quite fast. And if you start getting annoyed with adjusting up the handbrake every lunchtime, whatever, on a drift day. I'm a bit funny about inline hydros. I made a video about this ages ago. Two reasons for that. The main big one is I feel like adding something in the line that can burst, like it's an extra cylinder in your normal foot brakes, which I don't really like. That's like the biggie. But the second thing, which is the worst thing I don't like about it when you're driving it, is that when you pull the lever, it affects your foot brake. And the way I learned to drive, and the way I drive when I'm chasing people, I like to be able to pull the handbrake and sometimes press the foot brake on at the same time, and with it in line, it just seems to mess it seems to mess it up. My brain, it's probably me, my brain can't sort of deal with it. I need, if the foot brake lever moves and I want to press it, it sort of throws me off. So yeah, I don't like having, I prefer the standard handbrake over the inline, but I prefer the twin caliper. This is definitely going to stay. That's definitely the best. So I've blabbered on for ages now, but yeah, thanks for watching. I'm not sure what the next thing is to do. Probably just drive the car, really. Go do some sick skids, as they say. Catch you next time.